Hello everybody, it's Lynn Cox here, clinical hypnotherapist, rapid transformational therapist, and stress and performance coach. I wanted to hop on and talk a little bit more about the imposter syndrome. So I've dealt with clients one-to-one with this in particular, and I also actually do offer a corporate group experience. I'd recently posted some feedback from a participant in one of those group experiences who then actually became a one-to-one client. Anyway, imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome's not recognized in the officially as a mental health illness, but it has been widely acknowledged because many people report experiencing the symptoms. And these are things like not attributing your position, your achievements to yourself, feeling a little bit like you're fraudulent. And sorry, I've got a call coming through. I'm just gonna decline there. Feeling a bit like you're fraudulent, like you could be found out at any moment. And so in this blog, I actually remembered back to the first time I was so shocked. It was my first experience with really understanding how pervasive imposter syndrome is. So I was back in my early 20s, and it was early on in my career, newly out of university. I wanted to work for a PR firm. That's my first career, PR communications. That was my big goal. And so I landed a job with a PR firm that was part of an international network, very well known. I had 3 phenomenal bosses. They started up the company, they sold it to this larger international network, and we had some really fantastic clients. It was so exciting. I felt like I was walking on a cloud having got the job. But of course, because I was inexperienced, I had some fears that, I want to impress my clients, my bosses. I want them to feel like they've made a good decision. But those 3 bosses of mine, they were being coached by 2 very prominent business people here in Calgary. One of them in the oil and gas sector, and one of them was a very well-respected leader in the PR industry. And so these 3 bosses that I had, they were amazing coaches. They were like, that working environment was so healthy. It was so much fun. They were phenomenal. And I remember one day, I can't remember exactly what I'd said to my boss, but clearly she understood that I was feeling something like the imposter syndrome. So she told me that her mentor, the female, very well-respected, seasoned professional, had told her that even after all these years in the industry, and she was leading the strategy for some majorly important companies, she had said that she still had a fear sometimes that the phone would ring and somebody on the other end would basically say, hey, I know that you have no idea what you're doing. And that absolutely shocked me because I was well aware of this executive's reputation, experience. So it literally, it made me feel a lot better. And what a great coach and boss I had to share that information with me, because she was letting me know, hey, even this person who heads up a major firm and who has executives of massive companies calling her for advice, even her after all this time has that feeling, that like dreaded feeling that someone somewhere is going to call her on, not knowing what she's doing. So imposter syndrome. So why does it matter, and what is it? So it's very, very common. There are, different reports and studies on it. Some say women are more susceptible to feeling that way. I don't think that that's been determined, and to be honest, I haven't done enough research to know for sure. But what I do know, which is consistent across the board, is that roughly 70 to 80% of people do have this feeling. Often they can be high achievers and high performers. And, people can still perform and do really, really well in their careers and lives with this feeling. But why would it? So, what's the big problem? Well, the big problem is that it can get out of hand. Anything that's causing us discord, disharmony, undue stress, worry, fear, anxiety, and having that, one rule of the mind is that you can't hold, different ideas. So it can't be that, hey, I'm doing what I should do. I'm wise, I'm educated, I have something to offer, while on the other side saying, I feel like a fraud. Who's going to find me out? Like, that's actually not a very stable way for the mind and the psyche to be. And, if you truly want to feel good, getting rid of, overcoming these unnecessary stressors is a great thing to do. So, it's really common. A lot of people experience it. A lot of high achievers, a lot of high performers experience it. I was shocked to know that, early on in my career, that somebody so accomplished, somebody who I really admired and many other people respected and admired, still felt that way, even throughout their career. So, it is totally, people can overcome it. You can totally overcome it. And in this blog, I recommend you just check out the blog and then reach out to me if you're interested in finding out more. But some of the things that are helpful to remember is that the mind does what it thinks you want it to do. So that means our number one goal as a species, and if we look at our more reptilian brain, our number one driver is survival. How do we survive? We survive by staying safe. Back in our hunter-gatherer days, it was important to identify what foods were safe. It was important to be part of a group and community because in numbers came safety. That's why we're so worried about rejection, even in our modern society, when rejection wouldn't equal death, but it's a primitive part of us. It's a primitive part of our brain. It's helped us survive as a species. So survival and safety is really, really important. And so what does that mean in terms of imposter syndrome and putting ourselves out there? It means that taking risks, putting yourself out there can often, it can often result in a real fear response. Don't shoot for that. Don't go outside of what's safe. The mind wants to go to what is familiar and stay away from what is unfamiliar. But we can work on these things. We can know and understand how our wiring works. And then the key is to override the wiring. So we can, even though our go-to might be to stick with the familiar so that we feel that safety, we can actually make anything unfamiliar familiar and get ourselves to the point where that's okay. And also to another rule of the mind with respect to the imposter syndrome, I like to remind people of is that our minds respond to words and pictures. Our words create the pictures. So again, it's about overriding our system. We have so many thoughts in a day. I believe it's upwards of 60 to 70,000. These happen often automatically. Words create the pictures, so we have these ongoing thoughts that we're often not conscious of or aware of. We actually go in and out of a hypnotic state at many points throughout a day without realizing it. So again, it's about overriding your system. You can actively choose what ideas, what words, and the words create the pictures, so therefore what pictures go into the mind. It's overriding of the system. I mean, you could do these things out of hypnosis, things like having messages written on your mirror, artwork that's inspiring. Perhaps it's inspirational quotes, passwords with a message that you want to remind yourself of frequently and consistently. Mantras, writing things down over and over again. Hypnosis is a really effective way at overriding these familiar messages, familiar words, and familiar pictures, because when you're in a relaxed alpha brainwave state, you're highly suggestible. So you're more receptive to new ideas, new coding, new pictures, and a new way of looking at yourself. So it can be very effective to put yourself into a hypnotic state and just reiterate those messages to yourself. So, imposter syndrome, it can be really debilitating. Many people experience it. So if you experience it and, if you experience it and if you feel somewhat any kind of shame or like, oh, there must be something wrong with me that I feel like this, first of all, know that you're in good company. Many people experience it, and likely many people who you respect and admire and who would appear to have the highest levels of confidence in their skills and abilities either currently do experience that or at some point along the way maybe likely did, 70 to 80%. So know that many people experience it. It's so very common, and also know that you can get over it. So it's first of all acknowledging that, you know what, I realize this is here. I realize it exists. Start to maybe detail out to yourself when you notice you have those feelings. That can be a really great starting place. And then you can make the decision if you want to change it. I mean, at the risk of sounding overly simplistic, we can override our programming. And typically it's an unlearning of things. That's the process to, performing at higher levels, to feeling happier, to achieving other goals. Like if you want to reach health and wellness goals, weight loss goals, relationship goals, typically it's an unlearning of something. So an eradication of an old belief, an old looping belief, a familiar belief, and somehow it needs to be overridden. And it does take decisive action because we can't hold conflicting beliefs in our mind. They will end up canceling each other out. So there's got to be an acknowledgement, a decision, and then there are these other ways through repetition, through other coaching as well too. A lot of people employ the services of executive coaches, having somebody who you're accountable to. The way I work with people, I typically see people up to between once and 3 times per issue. You can hack, you can rewire, you can override, and you can just feel a little more comfort. Like it is possible to still achieve and feel comfortable doing it and not having that feeling like, oh, I feel like the phone's going to ring and somebody's going to say, hey, I know that you don't know what you're doing. So those are my thoughts for today. And I'm going to be doing a little bit of a video tomorrow about family dynamics, relationships, and how we belong, since the holiday season is coming up and a lot of people have family issues and relationship issues over the holidays. So take care. Have a great day.